This is BBC World News. I'm Lucy Hockings. Our top stories. Ukrainian officials say a convoy consisting of dozens of buses has set out for the port city of Mariupol to try to evacuate civilians after Russia agreed to pause its relentless shelling. Intelligence failure claims the war in Ukraine is going badly for Russia because of poor information at the Kremlin.
Mr. Putin has not been fully informed by his Ministry of Defense at every turn over the last month.
And I'm Kasia Madeira, live in Lublin at a school in eastern Poland where refugees are being integrated into classrooms like this one behind me.
In other news, violence in the West Bank. Palestinian officials say 2 men were killed during a raid. And one of Hollywood's biggest action stars, Bruce Willis, is retiring due to a brain condition. A convoy of Ukrainian buses has set out for the southern city of Mariupol to try to reach civilians trapped by Russian forces. The Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister has said the International Red Cross told him that Russia agreed to open a humanitarian corridor to the besieged port. Tens of thousands of civilians remain there after weeks of Russian bombardment. Meanwhile, a head of British intelligence says that Russian troops in Ukraine are demoralised, short of equipment and refusing to carry out orders. John Donnison reports.
Few people get close to Vladimir Putin. The Russian president is isolated, fighting a personal war with his own advisers too scared to tell him the truth. That's the assessment of Britain's spy chief, delivered today in a speech in Australia.
He underestimated the strength of the coalition his actions would galvanise. He underplayed the economic consequences of the sanctions regime. And he overestimated the abilities of his military to secure a rapid victory. We've seen Russian soldiers, short of weapons and morale, refusing to carry out orders, sabotaging their own equipment, and even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft.
On the ground, north of Kyiv, Ukrainian forces are securing areas recaptured from the Russians. Their enemy still lying scattered around them. They were cannon fodder, just kids sent here, Alexander says, before a reminder that around the capital, all is not yet quiet. And in the besieged and battered southeastern city of Mariupol, they've been burying the dead in the streets. The UN estimates at least 5,000 civilians have been killed here. With conditions deteriorating, there's another promise of a ceasefire this morning to allow people to get out, but such promises have come and gone before. In his latest address, President Zelensky said the war was at a turning point, but cast doubt on Russia's claim that it's de-escalating the fighting.
We do not believe anyone. We do not trust any beautiful verbal constructions. There's a real situation on the battlefield. And now, this is the most important thing. We will not give up anything, and we will fight for every metre of our land, for every person.
But many have already left. The United Nations says more than 4 million Ukrainians have now fled to neighbouring countries. John Donnison, BBC News.
Well, let's bring you right up to date with events around the country. We can take you to my colleague, Anna Foster, who joins us now from Lviv. Anna.
Thank you. Welcome to the western city of Lviv, where a lot of people have come. We were hearing, weren't we, there about places like Mariupol, besieged cities in this country. And Lviv is one of the places, we're out in the suburbs, where many new residents have arrived, people who never thought that they would live in this part of Ukraine, but have often taken very long, very perilous journeys, taken their families, their few possessions, and found themselves in locations just like this one. Let's talk to German Galushenko, who's the Energy Minister for Ukraine, joins us now. Good morning.
Morning.
Let's talk first of all, if we can, about those evacuation buses which we're told are on the way to Mariupol. Obviously, these corridors have been well, they're supposed to have been established before, but they haven't always worked. What do you know about this latest attempt?
So to tell the truth, that's not directly my question of location corridors. I know that one of our colleagues is responsible for this, and of course, what we know and what we see that unfortunately that a lot of promises from Russians failed, and not all these corridors works as they're supposed to do.
One of the issues they have in Mariupol, of course, and the mayor has talked about this more than once, is the fact that they've been without power for weeks.
That's true, that they are without power, without gas, and I can tell you that when the first hit was breach of the gas pipe, which goes to Mariupol, it was more than 3 weeks ago, and we were asking for a possibility to repair it, and we know what had happened. We need just to have the physical possibility to reach this place. The Russians refused, and we saw at this time that they were already prepared to block people there.
And tell me, from your point of view, as the energy minister of Ukraine, but also as part of the government of this country, how are you feeling about the conflict at the moment and about Ukraine's chances of successfully repelling Russia?
We have no other chance just to win this war, and we're absolutely sure that we will. And we can see that our army did, and so that's why we have no other possibility, no other things that this would be a victory in this war. Ukrainian victory.
And what about, we had those talks at the start of the week in Istanbul, and there was some suggestion that some of the possibilities that Ukraine was putting forward might be moving us closer to a resolution. Do you think that there can be agreement with Russia on a way to end this conflict? Oh, sorry, it looks like we've lost the Ukraine Energy Minister, German Galushenko. Apologies for that. But let me bring you back here to Lviv, and a family who escaped the besieged city of Mariupol that we've just been talking about have told the BBC that they were among hundreds of people asked to leave a cinema where they were sheltering from bombing in order, they were told, to give the children there a chance at survival. Food and water ran critically low. We know that family came here to Lviv, as have so many across the country, and our correspondent Lucy Williamson met them at a field hospital just outside the city.
When Alexander escaped from Mariupol 2 weeks ago, he left his mind behind. Still trapped in the cinema where he sheltered with his parents and hundreds of others, still in the apartment building hit by Russian rockets, in the rubble and dead bodies they ran through without even putting on their shoes. His parents brought him, catatonic, to this Israeli field hospital near Lviv to unravel his trauma.
It was constant bombing. Planes went by every 10 minutes and dropped bombs on Mariupol. People were falling and dying in front of my eyes. We buried people in gardens.
But there are airstrikes here in Lviv too.
We need to go down to the shelter, please. Everyone, let's go.
What must this be like after that? Trapped in the cinema by Russian attacks, they survived on scraps of food from locals or Ukrainian soldiers, boiling snow to drink. When supplies ran critically low, Natalia says everyone without young children was asked to leave to save resources and give the children a chance.
There was no way out. You could stay and die, or you could go and die. We couldn't even count minutes between the bombs.
Some of their pro-Russian neighbours, she says, believed it was Ukrainian forces pounding their city to dust. Mariupol's mayor says 5,000 people have been killed. and 90% of the buildings damaged. More than a third of its residents are still living there. Humanitarian corridors get people out of Mariupol, but the destruction and the killing there isn't just left behind. The damage is carried with its people out of the city, like invisible shrapnel lodged in their minds. Alexander is leaving hospital today. His father, a musician, is giving staff a farewell concert, giving thanks for the two things he saved from the horrors of Mariupol: his saxophone and his son. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Lviv.
Well, Lviv, of course, was the way out of Ukraine for so many people in the early days of this conflict. Millions of them, we know, crossed the border into Russia. Now, my colleague Kasia Madera was there at the time to see that and has returned to eastern Poland for us. Kasia.
Anna, the difficulties that we saw in Mariupol is overwhelming. Those people fleeing for the safety of their lives. I was at the border at the start of the war and I witnessed thousands of people coming across, predominantly women and children, making that hazardous journey across Ukraine to get to that border, from Lviv to the border with Poland, to then come into Poland, to then work out what they do next. Well, this is an example here in Lublin of what they do next. This is a school that has been welcoming in 60 children, 60 Ukrainian refugee children. This has increased the population of this school by 10%, but they're very much welcomed and they've been embraced. And on top of that, this school is also bringing in Ukrainian teachers. They are being paid to work. They used to be teachers back in Ukraine a month ago. They're now here, and some of them have got paid salary teaching in this school. It is a huge, huge achievement in a very short space of time, and the man behind it joins me now. This is Dr. Wojciech Wilk. Dr. Wojciech Wilk, and you are you do so much in terms of humanitarian work. You are the head of the Polish Center for International Aid, and you are behind what is happening in this school, that teachers from Ukraine can now work and can earn.
Yes, because Lublin alone has taken in about 2,000 Ukrainian children. Warsaw may take in as many as 50,000 Ukrainian children into the schooling system. This is going to be a strain for any of the schooling systems. So PCPM, the Polish Center for International Aid, we are assisting in employment, temporary employment until initially the end of the school year for 50 teachers here in Lublin, 250 in Warsaw, potentially hundreds in other cities. But on top of it, we are also helping the local authorities in Poland with interpreters, with psychologists, with people who could provide legal assistance to the refugees, because the main ground of the response is with the NGOs and local governments. And already this 1 month volunteering drive, it's still ongoing, but all of us are exhausted. So now we have to really gainfully employ the refugees to help us drive this response, as there is still no end in sight of the crisis.
Well, that's just it, isn't it? There's no end in sight. And what you're doing also, on top of employing or enabling these teachers to work here and earn their money and their independence, you're also offering a debit card as well. Just talk me through that.
A debit card like this is a debit card where the most vulnerable of the refugees can receive a 3 months cash allocations in order for them to allow to rent an apartment and cover their basic needs. Yesterday, in the transit center that is operated by Norwegian Refugee Council and PCPM in downtown Warsaw, we have received a busload of Ukrainian evacuees, civilians evacuated from Kharkov. 3 days ago, they were being shelled at. Now, 3 days later, they were in Warsaw in safety. But we also want to give them the dignity, because some of them have come out of the bus with only 2 plastic bags. That's all the belongings they have. They need to buy the clothes, they need to get themselves organized, and first and foremost, they need to find an accommodation, which in Poland is unfortunately increasingly short supply. The population of the major cities like Lublin, where we are now, or Warsaw, or other cities in Poland, has increased up to 20%. the rentals are pretty much not available. So we are also trying to use the cash assistance in order to encourage the Ukrainian refugees to look for accommodation in the smaller towns in Poland, where the cost of the living is cheaper, the rent is cheaper, and also where they would be also able to integrate in the schools.
Integrate in the schools, get their independence and earn money as well is absolutely crucial. And when you think about the numbers, 4 million people, over 4 million people according to the UN, have already left Ukraine. Over half of that number have come to Poland. It's having that independence through schemes like Dr. Wilk was describing that are crucial, and Lublin leading the way. This is a city that within hours of the war starting galvanized and brought together its municipal authorities, its NGOs, and that huge amount of volunteers to come together and to offer tangible help and that lasting to help. Of course, what happens next is the big question, and that is something that we will be exploring a little bit later in a special program here on BBC News, so I hope you do join us for that. But for me, in Lublin, in this school that has incorporated all of these kids, it's been an absolute joyous thing to see these children integrated into Polish society.
Thank you, Kasia. Kasia Madeira in eastern Poland. I know a lot of people here in Lviv, across Ukraine, actually are really grateful for the support they've received. I was talking to one man the other day who was showing me in tears just a text message that a Polish friend had sent to him, and the support that people here have seen right across Europe, I know, has meant an awful lot. That's all for now from here in Lviv, in western Ukraine. Let's head back to London.
Anna, thank you so much. And it is wonderful to see Kasia with the children there in Poland, the way they're integrating. She is hosting a session of BBC Global Questions. As she mentioned, it's really going to be worth joining her. It's a live TV debate. It will feature Poland's Deputy Foreign Minister and Russia's former Foreign Minister. Plenty more as well. So do join her on Global Questions tonight at 5 p.m. BST. Now, in times of war, there is fear, of course, anger, anxiety, depression, so many emotions. But a renowned Ukrainian film director has been asking what power art has in times of war. Irene Selik has directed a film called The Earth is Blue as an Orange, and she did it about a family who braved the war in Donetsk, but it was back in 2014. And it will be shown at BAFTA in London on Friday as part of a series of events celebrating the film and creativity within a country currently in crisis. And I'm pleased to say that Irene Selik is with me. She joins me from the city of Lviv. Irene, very good to see you. How are you and your family, firstly? You've left your home in Kyiv. You're now in Lviv. Do you feel safe?
We had to leave. My son, my cat, and I. We moved from Kyiv to Lviv. But my son, my husband, he's a writer and he's defending Kyiv right now. And my whole family is there. So I'm waiting for the opportunity to come back as early as it will be possible.
How often are you able to talk to them, Irene?
Sorry?
How often are you able to talk to them?
I am connected with them all the time, and it's not a big problem, I mean, to be connected. But, you know, I still feel quite far because I'm in the other city.
And how is the family, Anna and her children, that you filmed during your documentary? How are they doing?
They are doing well. They're in Vilnius right now, and I'm very happy that they're in this safe place because we were lucky to help them to flee from Donetsk region to Lithuania. That was a big luck for all of us.
Irina, did you imagine that when you were filming them, it would come to this, that war would envelop the whole country?
You know, I've been shooting them a few years ago, and I had a huge empathy to this family, to my characters, and to different civilian people who lived in the war zone. But I've never expected that the war could come to my city too. So this last month changed our lives a lot.
And the messages in your documentary, do they still feel relevant to now? Or when people watch it, what do you want them to feel?
Yes, all of us artists are looking for this answer, for that important question, what can we do in times of war, and does art have some power? I believe it does, and I'm documentary and fiction filmmaker, and I know that films They're not the powerful tools of capturing events and reflection, but also it could be tools of cultural diplomacy. For example, my film, The Earth is Blue as an Orange, it screened around the world on different film festivals and different venues, and it gives me a chance to talk, to have some dialogues, to build some bridges between Ukrainians and other people around the world. So it's important.
And Irina, how does it feel that the film community is coming together in such a way? Your documentary is being shown at BAFTA here in London tomorrow. There'll be funds raised for people in Ukraine as well.
I feel happy and proud about this opportunity to be screened at BAFTA, and I'm even more happy because this screening will help to raise money and to donate it for Ukrainians. So again, we are trying to fight on different fields, and while some people are defending Ukraine with weapons in their hands, we try to do at least something on cultural and info field.
There will be so many stories to tell in the weeks and months to come. Are you going to be picking up your camera again soon? You know, what would be the most important story you would want to tell if you were making a documentary right now?
You know, I feel right now that probably I will need some distance because I'm too close to everything which is around, and maybe I will need some time to reflect then. But of course, all of us will tell different kind of stories about this war, and we should reflect.
Irina, very good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us from Lviv.
Thank you.
Let's bring you up to date on some other news now. Palestinian officials say 2 men were killed during a raid in the West Bank city of Jenin. It follows renewed violence in the region, which has seen 11 Israelis killed over the past 2 weeks. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell has more for us from Jerusalem.
It's one of several trouble hotspots that we're following in the last few hours. The Israeli military says what happened is that its soldiers entered into Jenin to make several arrests, including those of 2 people suspected of helping a Palestinian man who carried out an attack in a Tel Aviv suburb earlier this week and shot dead 5 people. So in the clashes that resulted in Jenin and the refugee camp there were 2 Palestinians who were killed. We're told that they're aged 17 and 23. Several people have been wounded as well. And there are pictures circulating of young men armed with guns walking around in the refugee camp. And it's led to threats from one of the Palestinian militant groups, Islamic Jihad, which is based there. And then on top of that, we have from the south of the West Bank, from close to a settlement outside of Bethlehem, reports that there was a screwdriver used to stab a passenger, an Israeli citizen, on a bus. He had moderate injuries. Another passenger on the bus intervened and shot dead the attacker there. And all of this is just adding to this picture, really, that we have more and more violence building, and we're heading into a very sensitive period where already we know that Muslim, Jewish and Christian holidays are about to overlap. That always puts pressure on contested holy sites in Jerusalem and leads to rising tensions.
Yeah, what is the atmosphere like at the moment? What is the fear, Yolande, amongst just ordinary people that there's going to be more violence, particularly ahead of Ramadan?
I mean, ordinary people are extremely worried about all of this and what it means, because inside Israel, members of the public have seen a spate of deadly attacks, actually the worst there have been in years, which have left 11 people dead. That's putting a lot of pressure on the Israeli government to really clamp down, to increase security. And it's doing that. But at the same time, this is obviously a period where people want to have freedom to worship. There have been lots of high-level meetings going on between Israeli officials, Palestinian officials, bringing in the King of Jordan as well, because he is actually, for historic reasons, the custodian of Islamic holy sites in the old city of Jerusalem. And really, there are lots of efforts going on to calm things down, to try to strike the balance so that Palestinians from the West Bank, for example, will still have some access to Jerusalem, but it's extremely difficult to get that right.
Yolande Nell there. One of Hollywood's biggest stars, Bruce Willis, is to retire from acting after struggling to work while suffering with a brain condition. He's best known, of course, for starring in the Die Hard film series, as well as cult movie hit Pulp Fiction. His family released a statement saying he had been diagnosed with a neurological disorder caused by damage to the portions of his brain responsible for language production or processing. Formula One drivers are welcoming the announcement of a third race in the US from next year after securing a deal for a Las Vegas Grand Prix. The 6-kilometre track will include a portion of the Nevada resort city's famous strip. It will be a night race, everything will be lit up. The 8-hour time difference will mean it is broadcast early on Sunday morning in Europe. The governor for Nevada says it will have a $1 billion impact on the local economy. So one to look forward to if you are an F1 fan. Don't forget to go to our live page on the BBC News website, bbc.com/news. We've got all the very latest for you there on the website, the developments coming to us from Ukraine minute by minute. And I'll see you again shortly for the headlines.
Opportunities can be hard to find, like catching lightning in a bottle. In uncertain times, it's tempting to retreat or simply wait and see. At CME Group, we empower those who act. We deliver tools to help manage risk and capture opportunities in every market climate, across every major asset class, to seize each possibility at precisely the right moment. CME Group, opportunity is everywhere.
We make it warm. We make it fresh. We make it good for you. We make it fast. We make it fun. Just feel the joy and fall in love with the best of Azerbaijan. Good for body and soul. It soothes your spirit. Embrace the most beautiful scenery. Dive in and relax. Life here is good. Azerbaijan. Take another look.
Grana Padano, grated or in chunks, adds an extra Italian touch to all your dishes. Grana Padano, the world's best-selling PDO cheese.
Hello, here's the latest weather outlook for Europe. It's quite an unsettled one, I have to say, with low pressure really driving things over the next few days. This low swinging its way eastwards across the Mediterranean, bringing some particularly heavy rain across some southwestern parts of Italy. Could well be flooding and disruption here during Thursday. Really strong winds blowing up through the Adriatic, feeding moisture into the coastline here. Parts of the Balkans could well see in excess of 300 millimetres of rain over the next few days. Again, that brings the risk of flooding. Ahead of that, a bit more cloud working into the western side of Turkey. Some rain just beginning to fringe in towards Greece. A little bit drier than it has been across southeastern Spain, but still generally some showers across